Good morning, good morning. Well, no, it's afternoon. I'm getting our Thursday show confused with our Monday show. So I beg your pardon. Good afternoon, everybody. Luke Brenneman, Casey McAllister. Good morning, men. Good afternoon, men.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's afternoon, fellas. I just said that.
Hey,
Good afternoon.
For someone like me, anything before 2:00 is considered the morning. So I'll take the good morning because it actually is good morning for me, at least.
Okay. Casey, any thought on that, or are you all right?
I've been at it all day today,
Yeah,
so I'm
right.
just a little confused. But
Okay,
you sit here and do the show for 2 hours, and time just kind of like goes by really fast. You still think it's the morning, but
yeah. Well, that's what I was thinking, because I've been up and at 'em this morning. Had a lot going on. I got to get ready to go up to South Bend, Indiana today, make the drive up there. Weather's not looking too bueno, knock on wood. Hopefully it's okay. But welcome, all of you, to Dialed In. I'm Tom Brenneman, joined by Luke Brenneman and our producer, engineer extraordinaire, Casey McAllister. Our show presented by UDF and Encore Technologies. Lots to get to today. We come your way. You know, the Monday thing, we're going to be coming this Monday, but we're playing around with that because of Luke's schedule a little bit. So every Thursday, we know for sure we're here at noon. And you can find us on YouTube, the Chatterbox Sports page. Thousands of you I see already are in the chat. Thank you for being here. You can download us anywhere, anytime. Just search Dialed In with Tom Brenneman wherever you get your podcast, and you'll be dialed in. All right. By now, you've heard the comments made by Trey Hendrickson on Pat McAfee's show yesterday from the Super Bowl. Now, he says in one breath, right, that he wants to stay in Cincinnati. Doesn't want to play or be coached anywhere else or by anybody else. He wants to win a Super Bowl for our great city. That's awesome. Wish everybody would say that. It's what followed in the next breath that's one of the most puzzling things I think I have ever heard in my life, anywhere. He said, if a contract extension can't get done, then he hopes to be traded and that the draft picks can come to Cincinnati and win a Super Bowl for our great city. Huh? Does that make any sense whatsoever? Maybe it does to you. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. Maybe it does to you. The bottom line is this. I got a bad feeling about this Hendrickson thing. He has 1 year left on his deal. I don't know about you, and I'm wrong a lot more than I'm right. But I don't see them extending Trey Hendrickson after this year when he'll be 32 years old going into the following year. And then there's Joe Burrow. Now, I love leaders who aren't afraid to step out there a little bit. And it's the first time here in the last couple of months we've seen Burrow do that. But is he trying to tell Mike Brown how to spend his money? Do you want somebody telling you how to spend your money? I don't want anybody telling me how to spend my money. And to be quite honest, I love Burrow. He's my favorite athlete in this town in years, decades. But does he know what a perennial Super Bowl contending roster looks like? I don't know. Maybe he does. But maybe, and the last time I checked, neither Burrow or the Brown family has ever built a perennially contending Super Bowl team. Neither one has ever done it. Speaking of the Super Bowl, 59 in the Big Easy is Sunday. Kansas City Chiefs for an unprecedented third straight title. The Eagles won it all 4 years ago. 2 years ago, they lost to Kansas City. Jalen Hurts said that game has haunted him ever since. Kickoff at 6:30. We'll break it all down. We're going to have a little fun with the game. College hoops. UC basketball last night got a big win, and it's been a while. 18 days since the Cats won a game. 93-83 the final. Day Thomas scores 18 of his 20 in the first half. I have not understood, and we've talked about it on the show, I have not understood how Day Thomas has watched his minutes drop by 7 or 8 minutes per game compared to last year. I don't get it. But next up for UC, it's BYU at Fifth Third Arena this Saturday. Tip-off 6 p.m. We know X went to 14-9 with a win the other night over Georgetown. The Muskies go on the road Sunday. It has been a nightmare for a long, long time going to Villanova. That is a noon tip-off on Sunday. All right, man, let's get right to it. Let's start, first of all, with the Bengals. I don't know, fellas. I sit here and I look at this thing, and we've been talking about it ad nauseum already. But I sit here and I say to myself, and God bless Burrow for saying, hey, look, I'll restructure my deal and blah-da-da. And he says me and T and Trey and Jamar, and he throws in Gesicki yesterday on Radio Row and says, hey, we all want to come back. Here's my issue with him saying that. I love that he's standing up for his teammates. I love every second of it. But here's my problem, okay? If you're going to be able to afford all those, good for him. If he's willing to restructure his contract, that's fantastic. That's being a great teammate and clearly putting your team ahead of yourself. But they're going to have to cut a bunch of guys. Is he going to be the guy sitting in the room that tells about 8 or 9 or 10 of his current teammates, hey, you're out of here so we can sign T, Jamar, Trey, Gesicki? Luke, your thoughts?
I mean, I said this from the jump. I'm going to keep going back to it. Are the Cincinnati Bengals going to become the LeBron James Cleveland Cavaliers, the LeBron James Los Angeles Lakers? Or actually, for a change, and that's something we're going to talk about later in the show with this Luka trade, it seems like LeBron was independent or away from a decision made from a front office on a team that he was currently playing on. And that was quite refreshing to see because they actually won the trade, if not dominated the trade. So do we want to go that way? Because you brought up an interesting question. Does Joe Burrow know what it takes, or does Joe Burrow know what a championship pedigree team, roster, culture looks like inside the National Football League? Well, the alternative to that question is, hey, Tom, maybe Joe doesn't have to know that, but the Brown family certainly doesn't know that. So whatever's going on with the Bengals organization the last couple of decades, it's like this whole method, or if they're sticking to some system or some calculated risk when it comes to signing these. I mean, these people inside these organizations, between baseball, football, whatever, free agency, will still blow me away. Some of the metrics they look at and historical decisions and what they decide to turn a blind eye to and whatnot. So does Joe Burrow know? Does Joe Burrow know how to be a general manager of a football team? I'm not sure. But if we're going to have the savior of the city and one of the best, if not the most talented quarterback in the NFL now as our franchise quarterback, personally, me as a fan, more than a critic is what I am on this show, I'm going to let Joe Burrow maybe pull some strings. And if you want Mike Gesicki, if you want T. Higgins, if you want Jamar Chase, then go out there and dominate and kick every single defense as you know what. And if you aren't producing, you're going to get called out for it because that's professional sports at the end of the day, and that's why they're paid the big bucks.
Casey, what are your thoughts about this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind my franchise player telling the franchise what to do, to be honest with you.
You don't?
I don't mind, no.
But does that make him right?
You're going to win or lose with Joe Burrow at the helm, right? Like, I think if you're going to win the Super Bowl, it's going to be because of Joe Burrow. And whatever Joe Burrow needs to succeed to win a Super Bowl is what you should give him. And who better to know what he needs than Joe Burrow? And I look at the salary cap, too. It's just like the new TV deal. It's an ever-expanding salary cap for the Bengals right now. They have plenty of moves to make to be able to do the things that they've talked about time and time again. To me, why as an owner would I make my franchise quarterback uncomfortable in the situation that he's in just because I want to spend money a certain way? Like, I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me. You should just try.
Okay, but what if they came, Casey, to Joe Burrow and they said, now you say, okay, you trust him to know what's going to make him comfortable, okay? And that's fine. And I'm sure on the offensive side of the ball, he has full understanding of what makes him comfortable, okay? But, for every action, there's a reaction, okay? So if you go spend a fortune they're already spending a fortune on him. They're going to spend a fortune on Chase. He's suggesting, Burrow, that they spend a fortune on Higgins, they spend a fortune on Gesicki. Now, is he comfortable with all those guys and an offensive line that can't go spend the money? Is he comfortable where he has to score? In his own words, he had to be close to perfect. Those were his words, not my words. He has to be close to perfect because he had a defense that can't stop you, me, Luke, and 8 other guys. So what makes him comfortable? I mean, I think that's where I would love for a change, for somebody to press some of these guys a little bit when they start talking. Because I really don't think that you're thinking this thing through. And I'm not saying he's wrong. I don't know if he's wrong or right. All I'm saying is if you pay all of those guys, something's got to give. And what's a topic, Casey, Luke, that we talked about more than anything else this entire year, and to be honest, in Burrow's entire career? 2 things. One, he gets hit too much, right? Way too much. More than just about every quarterback in the league. And how long can that last? And number 2, they can't run the ball to take some pressure off of him. And I mean run it consistently, okay? Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Mike Gesicki don't help your running game. They don't help your defense. So, Casey, you're telling me this guy's got carte blanche and you're going to trust everything he's saying?
What I'm going to trust is that he knows what's best for him to be able to succeed. That's what I know. And if he says that he wants to keep Trey around, which he does, he's already said that publicly, then you should do everything you can to keep Trey around. If you need to keep Mike Gesicki around, you need to keep Mike Gesicki around, which he's not going to be paid the top tight end in this market whatsoever. T. Higgins, we've had that discussion time and time again. I think with the moves that he made during the season to switch agents, that there's some communication in the room, whether Joe Burrow has to restructure his deal to make that happen, that there's going to be some sort of give and take on both sides, whether it's T. Higgins not accepting $30 million but $28 million, and maybe there's more money up front that the Bengals can give because of the restructuring. I think all those are possibilities. I'm just looking here without making any cuts. The Bengals have roughly $50 million in cap space. And you assume that they're going to get rid of some guys that didn't perform at all last season or are just ready to be let go. And then that puts you about $75 million, Tom. Like they can do it. The Bengals can do it. It's just whether or not they're willing to start structuring deals the way that they can make it cap friendly for years to go, or if it's going to be something where it's all going to be pushed way back to where they're going to have to suffer the consequences later. Either way, the Bengals can do it. And what really is the issue is, the addition of the draft. They just got to hit on the draft if this is the route.
Well, we know that the percentages of how they've done there, especially in recent years. I'm not saying that they're incapable of putting together a good draft because they have in the past done that. But, I mean, come on. I'm not counting on that in any form or fashion. I love what the Real Spirit Cat had to say here. He said someone should ask Burrow if he wants 2 super stud receivers and have 1.9 seconds to throw it to him, or have 3.5, 4.5 seconds to throw to Chase, no T, and whoever you have left around there. That's a legitimate question. Nobody's going to ask that question. Nobody in the local media is ever going to ask that question. National media ever. Guys are just sucking up to people because you get them on Radio Row and they come over and they stop. It is what it is. And that's fine. I've been there. I've done it. Sucked up to the guys and that kind of thing. So I understand it. All right, let's get to the Super Bowl. Enough of this Bengals stuff. Luke, where do you want to start? I think that, to me, I've always said I'm never going to pick against Kansas City. And we'll get to our picks later, which, by the way, I now have a 2-game lead in the polls overall. Boy, I wish I'd have been betting on these games because I'd have a pile of money. But, I've always said I wouldn't bet against Kansas City, and I don't know if I will yet. I haven't decided yet about this game. But I got to tell you, Philadelphia has looked phenomenal. They have looked phenomenal. I think right now they look like the better team. What do you think, Lukey?
Yeah, I mean, the spread totally proves this is as coin flip as it gets. And I'm looking back on recent Super Bowls. There's always good runs in the postseason and exciting stories. The Bengals were one of them that obviously sticks with a lot of us and our viewership. But this is one of the best Super Bowls, not just from a Philly, Kansas City, two great quarterbacks, two unreal head coaches. Like these teams, pound for pound, player for player, are playing a different type of football than it felt like everyone else has. And obviously the Chiefs, they beat Buffalo pretty much in the final seconds of that game. So you could say it could have been them too. But it's just through the course of the year, like it would have been great if Washington pulled off the shocker in Philly. It would have been a great story. But we're looking at a 6-point spread in that game, a 10-point window, literally. The Chiefs are just huge favorites all the time. It is a coin flip because you're looking at an Eagles defensive line that seems all world. They get to the passer. They have the best running back and offensive individual athlete player scorer paired with two unreal wide receivers that nobody seems to talk about. And then a quarterback who's been in MVP conversations for now the last 3 years of his career that he's been healthy against a guy who might solidify himself as the greatest of all time in his position if he can win on Sunday afternoon. So I'm just more excited from the fact of, forget betting on this one, forget finding a reason to root for a team and watch. This is legit football, and that's how the Super Bowl should be every year, but sometimes it's a little bit different. I cannot wait for this game.
All right, I want to ask both of you guys. And Luke, you're the one that threw this question out inside of our document about things we wanted to talk about today, and thank you for doing that, by the way. Every Super Bowl has a player who unexpectedly swings a game, right? We remember the play down at the goal line, the Seahawks and New England. We remember the catch up against the helmet, the Giants and New England. Things like that. Is there a player who you are willing to go out on a limb and say, this could be a guy that swings the game? Casey, start with you.
I think the guy that's going to have the most impact on the game is Chris Jones. If he is able to continue his dominant run, this Hall of Fame run that he's been on, I think that he's going to be the guy that is the one that can stop the tush push, to be honest with you. And I made a bold prediction about a week or two ago about this game, saying that the Eagles were going to have the ball with the final remaining seconds at the goal line, and the Kansas City Chiefs were going to be able to pull the shocker and actually finally be able to stop the tush push because of Chris Jones. I think he is just dominant, Tom. Run stuffer, a guy that can get after the quarterback. I mean, I know a lot of people like to say, who's the greatest defender of all time? Like Aaron Donald or Green.
There's only one name in that conversation, Casey. There's only one name. It's not Aaron Donald. It's not some other name you're pulling out of a hat. The greatest football player of all time is Lawrence Taylor. But go ahead.
Right. You get my point. But
yeah.
But Chris Jones is entering in that conversation as one of these dominant guys that just completely changes the ball game. I think he's the one that I'm looking for to make just a impact play, whether that's a sack or a run stop. I think he's just going to be very important to this game.
Luke?
I have one on each team, and it's going to be on the offense for both teams. For Philly, Saquon jumps out at you, and the Chiefs, from a defensive scheming perspective with Spags, he is the best to do it in the NFL. And they all said that. And I love the interview. I actually forget who it was with. As long as we have Steve Spagnuolo, we're going to keep making the Super Bowl. That's the answer to end this dynasty, is somehow get him away from the Kansas City Chiefs. Because you pretty much give him nothing, and he cooks up the craziest, most athletic, flying around defense. And that's kind of what Philly's done too, but they have better athletes. I'll say this. Offensively, for the Eagles, I think Dallas Goedert has an opportunity to have a massive game. So that's my guy. If he can touch the ball, say 4 or 5 times in the first half and really kind of get rumbling. He's so physical. He's fast. He runs through you, not around you. So when the battle of the tight ends, Travis Kelce's just going to scream and jump out at you. But Goddard, he's been here before. And Chiefs have not been great against tight ends. I remember they gave up overall 10 catches in back-to-back weeks to way lesser opponents with Vegas and the Carolina Panthers. I know that the Bills don't really play too big of a tight end look, but they gave up 9 catches to Pittsburgh for over 100 yards to the tight end. They gave up over 100 yards to Tampa Bay, 15 catches to the tight end. So I think that's going to be a spot in film that Philly really wants to punch is get Goddard the ball. And then for the Chiefs, it's actually going to be Kareem Hunt. He looked unstoppable last week, and it's more the timely runs of Kareem Hunt. He knows when those 3rd and 3s matter so much more deeper in the early stages of the 3rd quarter and 4th quarter compared to let's just let those RPOs kind of play out in that first half. Let's get me going when it really matters, because he might be older. He might not be, top 10 in the league anymore, but running behind that offensive line, he knows how to get those extra yards and really push to get across the chains, because I think Kareem Hunt's going to have maybe a touchdown in this game and could pick up some massive second half first downs, because both of these offenses are so good and they're so well coached that I don't see him turning the ball over. I really don't. So who can execute and score points on a majority of their drives? It's going to be back and forth, back and forth. Who has the ball last? Kareem Hunt can manage the clock. Patrick Mahomes can manage the clock. Who's going to have those big plays in those middle 8?
I found it very interesting during the game, and actually before the game even started, Tony Romo coming on the air and saying, hey, I think that before the championship game a week and a half ago, and said, I really think Buffalo can run the ball on Kansas City. And the statistics would tell you otherwise. But as the game went on, Buffalo really started to grind out big chunks of yards on the ground. And make no mistake, it's almost impossible to pick against Mahomes. But Hurts is a really good player, man. He doesn't get enough credit. He just doesn't. He's tough. He's smart. He's been playing hurt. He's been playing efficiently. He may not be throwing for 350 yards and everybody, oh, God, look at 400 yards, 5 touchdowns. Yeah, and you lost. He's throwing for $150 and 2 touchdowns and no picks. And getting it done because of what Barkley's doing on the ground. I think it all comes down to Philadelphia's offensive line, because I think their defense is going to do well. I think their defense, Philly's defense, is going to get to the quarterback. But I look at their offensive line, which is a good group. It's a tough group. It's a physical group. And I think that going up against a very good Kansas City defensive line, that's the matchup of the game, because Barkley right now is the best running back that we've seen in the postseason or over the course of a single year in a long, long time. And then the other guy who always shows up when it matters, and some people love to hate him, some people hate him, some people love him, and that's Kelsey. This guy, when they need him the most, he finds a way. 7 catches, 110, 8 catches, 120, 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns. He just finds a way to get it done. So I think those are the 2 factors for me as far as people, if they're, I don't know if you'd ever call Travis Kelce an X factor or not, but because he's been around forever, he's going to the Hall of Fame. And by the way, he says he wants to keep on playing. Okay. So before we get to our predictions for the game, and we'll do that later, but how about a couple of wild predictions, fellas? I don't know, record-breaking performance by somebody. Barkley, rushing, right? Or a surprise MVP. Or I think that one team's going to score a defensive touchdown. Luke, start with you. Do you have a wild prediction for this one?
I don't know how wild people are going to think this is, but I think it's going to come down to a receiver playing dominant. And I think the wild prediction starts with, I really do believe that the Chiefs are going to limit Saquon Barkley. I seriously believe that. I'm not just saying that. I think that this defense, and knowing their philosophy, especially with how they played the Bengals and some other top teams, I think this entire 2-week period, they're saying to themselves, we have to make a beat-up, run-first Jalen Hurts beat us with his right arm. That's all they've said this week. And I think that's a pretty straightforward take in the sense of that's how you're going to have to beat the Eagles, is get the ball out of Barkley's hands on those early downs and make Jalen Hurts convert 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6 against this defense is a profitable down for them. So I think it's going to come down to A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. My bold prediction is that Brown has 2 touchdowns in this game. And on the other side of the ball, my bold prediction is that Patrick Mahomes might throw for 350 yards against this all-world defense. I just can't believe in anyone more than the confidence that he has instilled in me, not as a fan, because I'm a Bengals fan, not a Patrick Mahomes fan, not a Chiefs fan, but we're watching greatness, guys. The execution, the ability to stay composed, to never turn the ball over, to never have one of those moments where you're like, geez, that was a bad intentional grounding. Geez, that was a bad interception. It never happens. It's always a, whoa, he just won that game on his own. And collectively, I just don't know if I see anyone beating the Chiefs. So if I'm going to say a bold prediction, I think it's going to be, putting all my chips on Patrick Mahomes to not just win this game, but quite literally fry this Philadelphia secondary.
Want to thank, and this is a rare prop up to the player formerly known as Mouse Cop. He's bringing his A game with stats today. Said during the regular season, the Chiefs gave up 102 rushing yards per game. In the playoffs, they've allowed 148 per game. And by the way, the most rushing yards in a Super Bowl is held by Timmy Smith, 204. That was all the way back in Super Bowl 12, if you can believe that. So Mouse Cop brought his A game for a change today. All right, Casey, what about you? Any weird kind of a prediction for this one? Not wins and losing, but winning and losing, but something off the wall.
Besides the bold prediction I had about how the game was going to end, which I think will be historic in a way, stopping the tush push, I do think that I kind of agree with Luke here. I do think that they're going to try to limit Saquon the best they can, and I think that if they do it correctly, that there's a chance that we see a lot more of these Eagles receivers than we think. I have Devontae Smith possibly just going off. I think he could go for 125 and 2 touchdowns on the day and just absolutely carry this Eagles passing attack. I think that A.J. Brown's going to get shut down, to be honest with you. I think that the corner, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. McDuffie. He's going to do his job there, be able to lock that down. And I think Devontae Smith, he's going to have a field day, much like he did in the college football playoffs, where he ended up winning a Heisman, and I think he was pretty close on winning the college playoff MVP. Yeah. But I think we can see something similar.
That was against Ohio State, unfortunately.
That's right.
Yeah.
Tom?
All right, so I wonder about. I think your thought on Smith is a very good one because of what you just said about Kansas City's going to have to decide. You got to pick your poison, and this is one of the teams where, okay, you got Brown, you got Devontae Smith, and Luke, a great point about Dallas Goedert. He's healthy, and man, that dude's a stud. And then you got Barkley. So you've got 3 people in the pass game. You've got the best rusher in football. So something's got to give. Well, if they put McDuffie on Brown, which I'm assuming they will, I think that Smith, I'm right with you, Casey, he could have a monster game. But on the other side of it, this isn't I think 2 things this could potentially come down to. And by the way, my good friend Everett is going to laugh about this. You look at the kicking game. Both of these guys are outstanding kickers, Butker and Elliott. But Butker is always big when it matters.
So is Elliott. He's missed 1 kick in the playoffs. Only 1.
I understand, but he's not had a good year. And Elliott's been money for Philly. There's no doubt about it. Remember, the Bengals cut Elliott. Remember that. Elliott came out of college, was a Bengal, and they cut him. He's had a pretty good career. And, he never got that contract extension like McPherson did. But, Butker's money, and then you get back to the coaching, man. I think Sirianni is a much better coach than he gets credit for. I think that, when you look at their defensive coordinator, Vic Fangio, outstanding coach. Has been forever. But right now, Spagnuolo is the best defensive coordinator in the game. and they have the best head coach in the game. So I just wonder if at the end of the day, all things being equal, and it's a 1.5-point spread right now, all things being equal, if I had to pick, the Kansas City coaching staff, the Kansas City kicking game would win for me over Philly in two areas that could be the difference. All right. It is right around 12:32. Do you guys want to do our predictions or save those for the end? Because we have a couple of other things we want to talk about. UC, Xavier, and the Reds. What do you want to do, Luke?
I say we pick the game right now. I think
let's pick it right now. Casey, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. Luke, start with you.
All right, Super Bowl 59. We've hyped it up. I just cannot wait for this football game. Something that I think is the best mano-a-mano way to stack this one up, like you said, maybe the greatest coaching tandem that we've seen in history with Spagnuolo and Andy Reid, offense and defense, okay? And what we just said, I haven't even thought about this, and I don't know why. Philly has Saquon Barkley, an MVP caliber quarterback, a all-world Pro Bowl wide receiver, a Heisman Trophy winner wide receiver, and a hell of an offensive line. Who does Patrick Mahomes have, guys? He's got a running back in his 10th year in the NFL. He has a tight end who's pushing 40 and might propose if they win the Super Bowl and call it quits. And he's got a bunch of fast receivers who are fresh out of college. Marquise Brown, fresh off an injury. And you're pretty much saying Mahomes, Spags, and Andy Reid. Can they beat an all-star, all-physical, all-world, gritty Philly team? Can they do it, guys? I think they can. I'm never going to bet against the Chiefs the rest of my life if they win this football game. Give me the Chiefs. There's no reason to not take the Chiefs. To be quite honest, there's a lot of reason because Philly is so talented. But when you line up with 15 under center in that fourth quarter and everybody on that sideline can take a nap, they are so relaxed because they know he makes plays when it matters. And in big games, he does not lose. Give me the Chiefs to win not one, not two, but 3 Super Bowls in a row. Patrick Mahomes might be the greatest of all time.
All right, Case.
I mean, how can you bet against Patrick Mahomes? I'm going to spoil my pick here right now. And I've already told you guys about my bowl prediction, how it's going to come down to the final seconds. Eagles need a tush-push to get over the hump to win the game itself. Chris Jones blows it up, stops it for the first time, and it goes down in history. I think that's just how it's going to play out. And in that world, in that scenario, minus 1.5 is well beyond covered in that world. It's Mahomes, right? He's just so clutch that he's going to get this thing close. And if I think that they're going to win, the 1.5 is just too easy for him, in my opinion. Even if this comes down to a kicking match, I just don't see it being a 1-point, 2-point game. It's just not enough for me to sway my opinion on it. So, Tom, what about you?
Well, Sean Connor hit the nail on the head in the chat. He says, Tom's eyes right now are screaming Eagles. But will his brain? I am going with the Philadelphia Eagles. I always swore I would never bet against Patrick Mahomes. I am stepping out of that thinking for the first time, and every time I've ever done it, I've lost. But I think right now Philadelphia is the best team in football. I think that their defense is outstanding. I think their offensive line, their running game, their passing game, their wide receivers, I just think that they are really peaking at the right time, right now. Hanging 55 on the Commanders 2 weeks ago. So, there you have it, Sean Connor. You had it, brother. You had it. I am going with the Battling Eagles. Fly, Eagles, fly.
Disgusting.
All right.
Unacceptable.
All right. Let's get now to, since we're on picking things, spring training pitchers and catchers report in just a handful of days. I believe it's after this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. Hard to believe that baseball's almost here and almost upon us. I don't know how you guys felt. Look, I have said many, many times before, I am not a fan of analytics. That doesn't mean that I don't think there are some good things and about analytics. I do. And I think as much information as you can have about your opponent or about players you're thinking about acquiring, I think it's good information to have access to. So I'm not a total anti-analytics guy. But as the old saying goes, you can't judge what's in here and you can't judge what's in here based on data. You can't do it. A lot of people of the so-called experts feel like the Reds have had really one of the best off seasons in Major League Baseball this year with the players that they've acquired, either as free agents, in trades, whatever the case may be. So, look, all of us around here who pay close attention to it understand that they've done a nice job. Nick Krall's really done a nice job. But what does that mean for the analytics crowd? Well, the analytics crowd is predicting that the Reds are not going to be very good. Those numbers came out the other day, and they had the Reds over-under at 78.5, which means they're going to lose more than they're going to win. Luke, if you were a betting man, would you bet the over or under at 78.5 for your Cincinnati Reds?
It's kind of tough. I think that this is going to be a number that it goes back to the point that we talk about a lot with Marty, especially when he joins the show. How healthy is the pitching staff going to be in 4 months from now? How many innings are you going to get out of guys? And that's counting on Brady Singer, who you just acquired to be like the lead catalyst of the workhorse pitchers. Hey, guys, you follow my lead and throw north of 100 innings this year. It seems impossible. So I think that when push comes to shove, I'm going to take the over because I think they've made the right moves and I think they've made good decisions. And I really think that me taking the over comes down to Terry Francona. I just don't think he's a loser. Not that he would be a loser of a guy or a manager if in his first season in Cincinnati they go out and win 65 games. But Vegas did give the Reds a little bit of love. A lot of other analytical models had the Reds over under at like 73.5. I saw 76.5. So maybe they're not done entirely yet, and 78.5 is a generous number where some people would say, hey, maybe there's value on the under there. But I think for the most part, if the Reds can get off to a healthy and strong start and really count on these guys like Matt McClain to be the Matt McClain that we know him as, not a injury-prone Matt McClain or coming off injury and needs a slow start, then yeah, I think it's fair to say that this baseball team wins 80 games. But when you start making moves and you acquire Austin Hayes, get the words World Series out of your mouth. I mean, the Reds are lucky this year if they make the playoffs and they would be sneaking into the postseason. So they made right moves to get them back to not a pitiful losing team inside the NL Central, but yeah, they're going to be competitive. Will they win 80 games? I think so. But right on that, no more than 85.
All right. So you would bet the over on 78.5. Okay. Casey,
Yes.
Would you bet the over or the under on this?
I am betting the over on this. I do think
You are going to bet it. You're saying you're actually going to put your money down on it.
Yes. Yes, I will put
Okay.
I will put my hard-earned dollars on the over for the Cincinnati Reds win total this season. I just think that injuries, they're finicky, they're unpredictable, and when you deal with them as much as the Reds have dealt with them, at some point you feel like you're kind of due. And this kind of just feels like what it was last season, where a lot of analysts said if they're healthy, they're going to be really good. It's the same thing this time, but it feels like it's got all the pieces it kind of needs to do just enough to get over this 80-win hump, to be able to be a winning franchise this season and make some noise possibly in August. So I think that in October. And I think I'm looking at probably around the same number that Luke is, around that 85 number. But I won't be shocked if it just all comes together, because I do think that they have everything that they need. If everyone's healthy, if they can survive past June being healthy, I think that this is a really good floor-leveled MLB team that has the chance to go over the top. What about you, Tom?
I would take the over as well. I'm not a gambler, as you guys know, but if I was, I would bet the over. I'm not willing to go where Luke went to the 85 range. I don't think that right now, offensively, unless and everybody's saying this, so this isn't anything earth shattering here. Luke talked about it a second ago. Can McLean come back, stay healthy? I think Encarnacion Strand is a big part of this thing. Here's the thing. There are just so many, for me, there are so many ifs. Okay, I don't like ifs when people are trying to sell me on something. Well, if the stock market did this, and if the Fed does this with the interest rate, and if, I don't like ifs. Okay, I don't like them. All right? You have an if in McLean. You have an if in Encarnacion Strand. You have an if in Marte. You have an if Candelario can come back and play well again. You have an if in your outfield's offensive production. There are just too many ifs right now for me. If Nick Lodolo can pitch a full year. If, for the first time in his career, Hunter Green can make 30 starts. And go on and on and on and on. They're all over the place. So for me, I'm not going to 85, but if I were a betting man, I certainly would go with better than 78.5. And somebody in the chat here said they actually got their bet in when it was 77.5. So that's gone up one game at least till that happens. One thing that I would not, and I always urge people, because of spring training getting ready to start, okay? Do not get too high or too low on results in spring training. All right? You're praying for good health. You don't want to see guys like Candelario last spring training, right? I mean, he was god-awful, and it rolled right into the regular season, okay? And you don't figure that from a guy who's a veteran. But don't get wrapped up in it. You're just hoping that guys, you'll hear that term over and over, just got my work in. Well, okay, you got your work in, but you always feel a hell of a lot better about it if you got your work in as a pitcher and you got 4 innings and you allowed 3 hits, 1 run, struck out 5, walked 1. As opposed to 3 innings, 7 earned runs, walked 4, struck out 1. Okay, that's a big old duh. But don't get too wrapped up. I mean, if Ellie goes off and tears it up in spring training, big deal. Okay, big deal. Who cares? You just want to come out of spring training, everybody healthy, because the Reds' talent, if everybody is healthy, is pretty doggone good. All right, mentioned UC. UC finally got a win last night. It's been 19 days since they've won a game, and we know how bad they have been in some of these games. We talked about this, 3 weeks ago. For the life of me, I've never understood how this year, and he was asked about it over and over and over again in the preseason, he being Wes Miller, about playing Day-Day Thomas and Jizzle James at the same time. Yet so rarely do they ever do it. Well, when you've lost 4 or 5 in a row, you decide, let's give it a shot. And look what happens last night. You put up 93 points. And believe me, UCF's not a bad team. I mean, UCF's having a good year. They've beaten Kansas this year. They've beaten some good teams. This isn't some, you might think UCF. Okay, that's not the first game that comes to mind of Big 12 basketball powers. But they've got a good team. And UC went down there in their building and took it to them. Hopefully, Thomas continues to get more and more playing time. It's very, very interesting. Skillings last night only got 17 minutes in the game. This was the UC's best player going into the season. Then he got hurt. And now all of a sudden, he's not rebounding. He's not attacking the basket. He's not scoring. He's not doing anything. And last night, he didn't even start. But the bottom line is, Luke, they get a win, and they needed it. And I'm still not counting UC out from putting together some kind of run before this season's over.
It's tough. They dug themselves a really deep hole. I mean,
yeah.
you lose to Utah. I know it's on the road, and then you come back home and you're 7-point favorites against West Virginia and get beat by double digits to a team that is more than injured. I mean, I get it. You can get smoked by BYU. That's a tough place to play. You can lose to a top 15 team in Texas Tech, but it just seems like games that they really should be competitive, they shouldn't lose to Baylor by 20.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They shouldn't lose to that first conference game to K-State. So at this point, I really think you have to beat BYU at home. You have to beat Utah at home. And you have to, like, honestly, you're going to have to beat either Iowa State or Houston on the road. And those are two of the toughest places to play in the country against teams both inside the top 8 right now. So it's like, yeah, I think that they should beat Utah. They're going to beat West Virginia on the road. I think they'll bounce back from that one. But it's like, what makes you think that Cincinnati's going to beat Baylor? I mean, we lost them by 20 on the road, but we're going to come back home.
Yeah, but I think you got them at home, and I think Baylor and Utah are two games that you're gonna play a lot better against them at your place. Not that UC's been any great shakes at home this year, because they haven't. But I just think that they're going to play much better against those teams at home than they did on the road. I can't speak for BYU. BYU's got a pretty good team. But again, you got them at your place.
What I'm saying is they've lost so many games now that are just gross losses inside the conference. Like the Big 12 is a conference where you can lose 7, 8, 9 games in the league and still easily make the tournament, depending on the quality of your wins. And all Cincinnati had to do was lose to Iowa State, lose to the Houstons of the world, lose to Kansas at home, even when you're favored in that game. Who cares? But take care of Utah on the road. Be competitive with BYU. Beat West Virginia when you're nearly double-digit favorites. So it's like now they really need those games. It's like, oh, you can't win one or lose one and then win two. Like they got to go on a run here. And I don't think that the Wes Miller era is over, and I'm going to continue to stand on that. He needs another year. Give this guy another year. He's still recruiting, because if you let go of Wes Miller and you lose recruiting at Cincinnati, what are you, like a 2-9 team in the league? Who wants to go play at Cincinnati compared to maybe someone similar in the conference, Arizona State? I'd rather go to Tempe. I'd rather go play for Hurley. They're at least somewhat competitive, and I know the Cats beat them this year, but it's like recruiting inside the Big 12. Now that you're not in the American, you're going after different types of kids, and Wes Miller is getting these kids right now. So I'm keeping him in his job and say, hey, let's wake up, coach, and do something special, not just now, but also in the Big 12 tournament. We'll see.
Well, they're
definitely on the outside looking at.
Well, here's my fear about UC, is that if they don't get it turned around, and one game does not make a turnaround, my fear is some of the guys that you could have coming back here next year staying with your team. Their recruiting class for next year is fantastic. But if you keep floundering around, going like they've been going, I mean, does Jizzle James come back here next year? I don't know. Is Skillings going to come back here next year? I mean, this guy now is coming off the bench. You know,
got a point.
When I travel around and I do these football games in the ACC and now basketball games in the ACC, you know, we'll ask coaches about NIL and about recruiting and about all this stuff. The number one thing they talk about is being able to retain your own guys. You know, all of us are worked up about, okay, who's coming back next year? Who's coming in next year? Blah, 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 blah. Well, right now, if you're Jizzle James or you're Dan Skillings, Rayvon Griffith for that matter, who for the I mean, I don't know what the deal is with Griffith. All I hear about from Wes Miller is how he plays with all this energy. He deserves more playing time because of how well he practices. He never plays. I mean, never plays on a team that has just, you know, gone to the tank. So at any rate, all right, then there's Xavier. Before we get out of here, I want to get to X, because unlike UC, Xavier's development of their players has gotten considerably better as this season has gone on. Now, do they have a legitimate go-to stud with a game on the line? No, they don't. We've seen flashes from different guys. But every one of their guys is figure out what their role is. They figure out how they can best help the team in that role that they're in. They're accepting of the role, and off they go. So like the game the other night, it's the first time against Georgetown. It's the first time really all year long where the guards gave them nothing. Zero. Almost 0 points. Almost zero, a goose egg. Their big guys find a way to get it done, and they win the game. And all of that comes down to coaching. I used to kid around all the time about how we could never get Sean Miller when I was hosting Off the Bench on the show because he couldn't figure out the technology the one time. But, dude, make no mistake. That guy can coach. The guy can coach. And he has finally looked at his team through a lot of this, and they're no slam dunk to make the NCAA tournament. They have 4 home games left. They have 4 road games left. I think they're going to have to win all of their home games, and that includes Creighton. And I think they're going to have to win all of those games, and at the minimum split on the road to have even a chance where they might have to even win a game or 2 in the Big East tournament to get in. Because, like you see, they've had so many losses this year, and not good losses, where, I mean, they're 14-9, right? So, I mean, and so, we'll see how it all plays out. But, Luke, you got to give it up to Miller. Guy knows what he's doing, man.
Well, that's the perfect transition into what we were just talking about. When I talk about Cincinnati, and the Big 12 is probably, I don't really know if I can say better because St. John's is unreal right now. UConn coming off back-to-back. Marquette plays some of the best defense in the nation. The Big East is definitely more top-heavy than it's been in years past, but at least the guys up top are like total national title contenders like they should be. But like Xavier's done everything that Cincinnati wishes they could have done inside their league. What does Xavier do? They lost a tough one on the road at Georgetown. They want that back. But what did they do? They were competitive against St. John's. They beat Villanova when they had Villanova at home. They beat UConn when they had UConn at home. They played Marquette to the final second at home. So it's you hang around against these good teams that maybe you shouldn't meet, that you certainly don't have to beat to make the NCAA tournament, but you install that confidence into your group to where, okay, you had a tough one and Georgetown gave you everything that you could handle a couple of nights ago, but you held on and won. Yes, you went to Creighton. You were 8-point underdogs and you lost. That is a game that you can lose, but they haven't lost too many of the games that they should win. I mean, heck, they went to UConn at a point in the season when UConn was a teetering top 10 team in the nation and scored 90 points and lost by 5. It's like that's the type of that was coming off a crosstown shootout loss early in the year. It's the type of development that you're actually seeing inside of the Sean Miller Musketeers that you're certainly not seeing inside of the Bloomington, Indiana, Mike Woodson, Indiana Hoosiers. So the ability to not get your brains kicked in against good opponents really does go a long way inside your league, where I'm looking at their final 8, Dad. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I don't really think it's that crazy. I think the chat's going to blow up when I say this. I think Xavier can win 7 of these 8 games.
Oh, I agree with you. I agree with you.
I think that it is very much a win on this road trip that they're going to go on to Nova and then quickly turn around the following Wednesday after Sunday at Villanova to go to Providence. Those are 2 extremely hard places to win. And I know both of those teams aren't in peak form, but Providence is so tough to win at. So if they can go 1 of 2, they're going to beat DePaul at home. They're going to beat Butler at home. They're going to beat Seton Hall on the road. And then you get a crack at Creighton at home. Then you got a crack at Butler on the road. Who says they can't win 7 of 8? I really have faith in Xavier, and I think it's going to be exciting if they can make the tournament because it's yet again another testament inside of college basketball to how great of lengths your head coach goes to the sake of your team and your success for the course of a very long season.
Yeah, and we'll get into some coaches next week as we start getting maybe a little further into the season about guys that are legitimately on the hot seat. Because you brought up Woodson. They were a complete no-show the other night at Wisconsin. I mean, after playing 3 tough games in a row where they lost, but they competed. And, I mean, they just completely laid an egg in the first 5 minutes at Wisconsin. That was embarrassing the other night. We'll talk about guys who might be on the hot seat because there could be some big-time jobs that are open at the end of this year. But nobody's done the job of Pitino. And this is where they talk about young guys, old school guys, whatever it is. Man, whether you like him or you don't like him, that cat is the best coach in college basketball. And I don't care what anybody says. Rick Pitino is the best coach in college basketball. And in my opinion, ain't even close. Okay. What's the move this weekend? Casey, we begin with you, my friend. You celebrated Alexandria's birthday last weekend. What about this weekend?
Ooh, so February is crazy month for Alexandria and I. We have so many birthdays. Her birthday was on the 3rd. We celebrated that. Her father's birthday is on the 8th, as well as my nephew. So we're going to be celebrating those birthdays, and we're going to do a Super Bowl party for them, and that's going to be a lot of fun. And then that's basically it. Super Bowl party, birthday parties for my weekend.
All right, cool. Luke?
I'm actually working a lot this weekend. So tonight I am on the student radio broadcast. I'll send actually the link in the chat. I just sent it. If you guys are really bored and want to tune into Indiana versus Rutgers women's basketball, I'll be dialed in. I'm on the play-by-play tonight at 7 o'clock at Assembly Hall. And then on Sunday, right before the Super Bowl at 3 o'clock, I'm going to be doing the Indiana women's basketball versus Minnesota game. That's actually going to be from the studio because they're on the road, so not at the hall. But 2 games this weekend, that's kind of how you grit and claw your way through these weeks as a sports media student. You go to class and it has nothing to do with what you want to do in the future, and then you turn around and call the games in your free time. So I'm really looking forward to being back at the museum that Assembly Hall has become, because there certainly isn't success on the men's side. But Terry Morin and this women's team, they're playing good basketball right now. They're fun to watch, and they have some serious scores. So I'll be doing a lot of broadcasting this weekend, and that's why I came here, and that's what I'm trying to do. So I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. Blackmore wants to know if I'm canceling my Politico subscription. That's smart, Blackmore. That's smart. That is really, really smart. And for those of you that don't know what he's talking about, read the news. Doge at work. Okay. I'm driving up with my bride today, who is a Notre Dame alum. And I have a basketball game up there this weekend. So we're jumping in the car. We're going back to her alma mater. Call the game on Saturday. And then, Luke, you just broke my heart. And I know your mom's watching right now somewhere. You did not mention that Mom and I are driving from South Bend to Bloomington to take you to dinner before you go out and hang out with all your buddies on Saturday night. We get to stop and see you. That's my weekend. And then a Super Bowl party on Sunday. I'm excited about that. Any comment, Luke? Because your mom's watching.
Well, no, I'm very much looking forward to you guys coming. I can't wait. I'm serious. I knew you would say something along those lines, so I wanted to be a little bit different, highlight some stuff that I'm doing besides eating dinner this weekend.
The BS flows straight from your grandfather. It bypassed me and right into you. All right, gentlemen, thanks so much for everything. Luke, have a great weekend. Good luck on the broadcast.
Thank you.
Your mom and I will be dialed in today. Casey, have a great weekend, my man. Thanks for everything.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, and thank all of you. Chat was great today. It was great today. Thank you, Matt Bailey. He says, Luke, Tom is a great dad. Well, I don't know about that or not, but thank you. Thanks to all of you. Have a great weekend. What?
The Chiefs. They're going to win.
Oh, is that your pick?
No, my pick is actually the pick is going to be a season-long pick. Get on the Dallas Mavericks live win total over. I got faith in Anthony Davis. I got faith in Kyrie.
Oh, my God.
The Luka madness is over. 270. He can't play defense. The Mavs are going to turn into an NBA powerhouse. I'm becoming an NBA fan now because of this trade, and I'm not hopping on that LA freak show bandwagon. I am with the Dallas Mavericks. So I'm riding with this guy Nico for whatever that's worth. Plus
okay,
10.5
big boy. Good stuff. All right, everybody have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.